Incredible, man.
Yeah, all set. All set. Hi, I'm Noah Zacharin, and this is my CJSW library picks. So, as we were talking before, looking through the library, I used to have a radio show at Ryerson in Toronto, and the greatest joy that I would have during the week would be going there an hour before my show and just poking through and recognizing names and just bringing stuff up and putting it on air. Uh, Sometimes my first hearing of it, and sometimes stuff I'd forgotten about. So it was really ridiculous to go through your fantastic collection here and have to choose. But as an adult, as a maturing adult, one must make choices. So I've narrowed the must be like 35,000 pieces in there, maybe more, maybe 50,000, down to a few. I've just names of songwriters and guitar players who've influenced me in one way or another through my ongoing journey as a musician. Arbitrarily, Steve Goodman. Now, the essential Steve Goodman is looks like it's a twofer, um, and it draws probably from he would have had about 3 or 4 solo records before he passed away at a very untimely age. I think he was still in his 30s. A big Chicago Cubs fan, fantastic guitar player, beautiful singer. My first experience with him might have been at Mariposa in the um, in the early '70s, but it could also have been uh, when I was a kid. FM radio began, and it was an opportunity for DJs to be a little less strictured about what they would put on, and they often aired live shows from one or another club in Montreal. And I heard a solo show of Steve Goodman from the Karma Coffee House in Montreal. He was a virtuosic guitar player and loved R&B and just sang like, he sang like a you know what. And he was also a really moving songwriter. In the city of New Orleans is, I guess, his most famous song that was covered by many people. Um, um, he's got a song called "The Ballad of Penny Evans," which he sings a cappella, which is it's in the voice of a widow of a Vietnam vet, and it just goes from verse to verse, and it just gets deeper and darker and more tragic each time. Like every time it comes to the end of a verse, there's no way you can imagine him going farther. It's beautiful writing. So like Steve Goodman, the essential Steve Goodman is essential. Um, John Martin. This album is Solid Air. He has a couple of other albums from around the same time, also on Island. Bless the Weather is another LP that's essential listening for anybody who loves, you know, deep singing. He was, I think he was Scottish. Um, he was notorious for drinking on stage. He paid the price in the end. He exacerbated his diabetes, and at the end of his life, he was wheeled on stage in a wheelchair. But he never stopped playing, and he never stopped singing, and he was so remarkably deep. And he was one of the first, actually, to use effects on a regular basis for his acoustic guitar. He had an Echoplex, and he would create these fantastic sound panoramas well before anybody was. There were no loopers. There were no commercially available loopers. So he was a real pioneer in that respect. And he wrote a song called "Solid Air," which is the title of this. That was for Nick Drake, his friend who had passed away. And this album is from the '70s, I believe, or it could be '80s, early '80s. But there's a version of him. His mainstay bass player was Danny Thompson, upright bass player, and there's a recording of the two of them playing the same song, "Solid Air," probably like 40 years after it was first recorded. And there again, I just never thought he could go farther and deeper, and it was just the sound of decades of hard awareness of things and the way life goes. And he sang the song, and it was just heartbreaking. Check it out on the YouTube. But John Martin.
Very funny that you bring up. I was just going to Nick Drake on the
Oh
train
yeah,
right over here. Yeah.
yeah. So they were contemporaries, right? So
Yeah.
and if Nick Drake had known that his music would be selling Volkswagens, he probably would have, you know,
Stuck around.
he would have survived. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was his biggest thing too, is that he was so frustrated by it. Right?
Yeah, and because he made beautiful records, and they just got, they weren't ignored by people who knew music, but they didn't they didn't yeah, they knew what he wanted to do. So because I have my glasses off, I'm going to continue in the LPs because I can see another essential twofer. This is Vanguard's twofer series, Oregon. Initially, when we were looking through the library, I was looking for Ralph Towner. I'm a guitar player, and Ralph Towner, besides his work with Oregon, has an extensive solo career. He's also a beautiful piano player, and he plays mostly 12-string guitar and nylon string guitar. That's his thing. And of course, the music that he made with Oregon was just beautiful. I think the tune that most people know, if I can squint a little bit, is called Waterfall. Waterfall, I think. I can't see, but just really beautiful. And all these guys, you can tell that they have. There's a tabla player and an oboe player. Like, where do you see oboe player in a band? So they all would have extensive classical training, but they just brought it and made beautiful music. So the Essential Oregon, as a nod to Ralph Towner and the other guys, most of whom are dead. Ralph's still going. And John Fahey. John Fahey is a relatively underknown guitar hero. Anybody who plays instrumental guitar knows of John Fahey. I consider John Fahey to be sort of the spiritual father of Leo Kottke, who is the spiritual father of Michael Hedges, and from there it goes on, Pierre Bensusan. But John Fahey in the 60s was probably one of the first. He wasn't the first. There were a couple other people, Sandy Bull and a few other people were doing instrumental music on the steel string guitar and not using it strictly for accompaniment, and not strictly following the folk tradition that they would have listened to when they were growing up. And he took the steel string guitar and said, "This is a legitimate American instrument, and I'm going to make American music." I think he called it American primitive. And I used to listen to him a lot when I was growing up. He was one of my first influences as a teenager. And really, I mean, I'm a songwriter now, but if I had had my druthers, I would have just followed in John Fahey's path. I used to tune my guitar. He was one of the first to use altered tunings, changing some of the, and I would just tune my pegs, make a sound that I liked, and I would lie down on my back and I'd play for an hour.
Wow.
And I still go back to him for inspiration. He would on many of his records he used ambient sounds, so like traffic and a marching parades and stuff. Just the idea of multi-track before it was easy to do, and just brought a lot of musicality to the world. So John Fahey, also now deceased, but well worth checking out. Now, the little things, the little CDs. Brian Eno, Music for Airports. This was my first encounter with ambient music. I was at a book sale at U of T. No, at McGill. A wonderful woman said we should go to the book sale, and I went with her, and this was playing in the background, and it was my first encounter with his music. I don't really listen to a lot of music at home. I write and I play music, and there are very few things that I feel I can play that don't really get in my head and start bothering me. I listen to Miles Davis, So What, a lot.
Yes.
Kind of Blue, and I listen to this record a lot, and I listen to a couple of Ralph Towner things, just instrumental. But this music, if I don't think there's anybody on the planet who doesn't know about this music, but if there is, this is healing music number one. It'll take you where you need to go. You can stay in the airport, you'll be fine. Brian Eno, Music for Airports. John Lee Hooker. So I don't really know which one this is. I can't read it. I think this says the essential John Lee Hooker, but there are other records of John Lee Hookers that are equally essential. The first real concert I ever went to, I was in Montreal, and a bunch of high school students, I think there were 4 or 5 of us. One of the guys said, "Let's go see John Lee Hooker. He's playing at the Esquire Show Bar." And the Esquire Show Bar was a much storied venue on Stanley Street that at that point had lost its liquor license. I'm not sure if it was for serving underage or for being over capacity, but much to our good fortune, the group of 4 or 5 of us 15-year-olds went. We sat about as far as I am away from you,
Wow.
front table, watching John Lee Hooker when he was probably in his 40s, and he was so like the sexual energy and the power in his. He played a solo set and he played a set with the band, including his son. And we met. I still have the playbill that I have in my studio of that I picked up from the table at the Esquire Show by John Lee Hooker, and we had a reunion like 30 years after we'd seen him. One of the guys came up to me, and the first thing he said to me was, "Remember when we saw John Lee Hooker at the Esquire Show Bar?" So John Lee Hooker, everybody knows him. Always good to go back. I have Leighton Hopkins here because Leighton was one of the first records that I bought. I love Leighton Hopkins. I'm going to put him next to John Lee Hooker. I'm sure they didn't necessarily get along that well in real life, but their approaches to the music were very different, but really drew from the same very, very deep well. I love Leighton's voice, and he's a bit more of a country edge to it, but beautiful player. And like John Lee Hooker is all about the drone and all about the hammering away on the low strings, and this guy is just fantastic, a player, Leighton Hopkins. And then, because I have to cut it off somewhere, I was instructed as such. Dave Bromberg. So this is a record called "Use Me," that it's a nod to his genesis as a sideman. He came out with his first solo record in '71, I believe. It was just titled David Bromberg. That was where I first heard about him, in an issue of Guitar Player. My dad, God bless him, had got me a subscription to the magazine, and the second issue was the artist issue, and Bromberg had just come out with his first solo record. And the description of him as a sideman and as a writer was just absolutely compelling. And not to my father used to also, lose his voice when he was talking. He became one of my big guitar models, just because I started out as a sideman, and I really wanted to be a second guitar player, and the whole idea about being in the front and singing for people and trying to amuse them really never appealed to me. I just love the idea of playing guitar behind somebody and making whatever they're doing sound a little bit grander. So I do that still. I play with a lot of people, and I'm in a band again, and I'm sort of reassessing what I'm doing as a solo performer. But Bromberg was, made an excellent marriage of the two. Beautiful, recognizable sound, and played many instruments. And this record, he's just playing songs with a bunch of people that he's played with, and they're co-writes or just duos, including Levon Helm and John Hyatt, Dr. John. So he has lots of very, very influential musical friends, but his entire catalog is brilliant, and his trajectory as a performer, and then retired for many years to make violins and study them and sell them, and then come back as a very, very popular solo performer is quite remarkable. Those are my picks. CJSW, 90.9 FM. I'm Noah Zacharin, and behind the camera, my dear friend Drew Miller. Thanks for listening.